Howdy, howdy, Mark. We'll give it a couple more minutes. I'm going to pause the recording, but we'll give it a couple more minutes, see if anybody comes in. Today's lecture is probably one of the shortest of the semester. We actually don't do any coding today. We just talk about um, social concepts around technology. But I also, this is the week where class is kind of wonky because clocks went back, but we are at an institution that is in a place that does not observe daylight savings time. Oh, their clocks don't change, and everybody else's does. So, yeah, people may or may not make it that usually make it, but we'll give it until a few more minutes. So take this time to take a minute if you need to. All right, so I'm going to kind of jump around a little bit, but we are in week 11, which is crazy to think. We have about a month and a half left of class. By this time in the class, you should be pretty comfortable with the concepts that we've been using within the course. You should be understanding of the cyber concepts. We've really dug into like forensics and things like that, as well as doing a little bit of offensive work as well. Nothing as crazy as like what you'll do in like 480 here, excuse me, in your cyber ops operations class. But you are doing some offensive work, I guess is the best way to put it. That being said, today, as mentioned before I hit record or in the middle of the break, while waiting for people to step in just because of the time change this week, oh, I was making mention that we're actually not doing any coding this week. This week is looking at things from more of a social phenomena, and how we can utilize technology to do things such as that, right? And the big thing is social media. Social media is everywhere, right? You get on your phone, you're probably like half of the population is addicted to it. Like you got to get like how many people do you know that just like literally unlock their phone just to hit a social media button like Instagram, Facebook, Reddit, anything in there between. I'm sure I know I'm missing a bunch of others, but those are the first two that come to mind. And you just do it just to open it and be like, oh, okay, and then you close it, right? Like there is an addiction there, right? Um, so knowing that, um, it is a big thing to think about in the sense of like how can you manipulate people while using social media? Um, and like what does that entail, right? So if you know that someone is going to Facebook often, how can you potentially manipulate that? How can you potentially abuse that, right? Can you do things like sit at a coffee shop and do like typo squatting where you put up something where people it may redirect people to a fake Facebook and they try to log in and then they say and then it caches their credentials and sends them to you and then redirects them to the actual Facebook. Or can you use it in the sense of like, I don't know, there's the typical political standpoints where politics plays a big part in it and the way of how it manipulates people and moves them to and from their own political stance, right? Um, so there's that. There's also the way of how like I don't know. I know that like people I've heard about people having family feuds because of Facebook and Instagram and things like that. So it can be anything from where it's just your small circle of people to a much wider net where it can be global. Okay. Um, Depending on what you do and who you interact with, things can be classified as like hate speech, free speech, cyber war. I mean, it says here cyber warfare. Um, there are a bunch of different things. And, I would say if you can, um, not saying you can't, but if you can, just because sometimes it can be hard to stomach, no matter which way you lean, um, look at the way of how politics push things now. Would you consider that cyber warfare? Some would. Some would consider the ways of how politics push agendas, even through things like social media, such as like Facebook, is cyber warfare because it's trying to push a way to instigate or insinuate things, right? And that is a bipartisan mention, right? I'm not saying it's not current with politics. It has just been part of politics. the past, I would say 2 decades at least. Well, at least heavily in the past decade and a half. Um, but you have to think, what is that? What type of speech is that? And is it something that can be weaponized? And if you think about it, remember going back to thinking about the cyber kill chain, where you do recon and then you weaponize that recon, right? So you do that if you're gathering information about people and then you figure out a way to manipulate a group of people, and then you're essentially weaponizing speech, and then you're posting it out, and that's the way of how your payload is going out and it's being delivered, and it's exploiting people by making them do certain things, right? Um, what percentage of Twitter personas would you guess are real people? I wouldn't even just say Twitter, right? I would just say social media personas in general. Take Twitter out of there, but like how many? Essentially, what this is saying is like how much of this is bot activity and how much of it isn't. Okay, and also when you think about it, you have to think who's responsible for this and who should be regulating it. And that's really where you see a lot of like the free speech and the open internet and all this other stuff come into play, and then making sure the government doesn't put sanctions on the internet because that takes away free speech, but also to help regulate content better. And then of course we see that that's private towards the companies that own the applications, but those are things to think about, right? Here's a question. Do I teach 480? I used to. I don't anymore. Since I'm only adjunct faculty, I'm only allowed to teach one class a semester. So I've been teaching. I taught that one for about a year and a half, and then they needed somebody who was decently proficient in Python, and asked me, and I've been teaching this one ever since. Yeah, 480 is a really good class. I think if I remember, Dr. Paul Wagner teaches it. I believe so, if I remember correctly. He's also good to work with. All right. Is Facebook a problem? Is social media regulator the fix? I mean, this is an older thing, but this is a tale as old as time. You don't even need to date it back a few years. Again, how do we regulate it? How do we make sure that it doesn't just become this thing where people just listen to everything? And you know what's interesting? In talking about this, ways of how it could be regulated, and this was some research that I did recently with a couple other guys, a couple other researchers rather, is having the use of open AI being able to fact check things, not having like where Facebook can fact check something because people aren't going to believe if Facebook is fact checking something because they're going to be like, oh, it's Facebook. And there's a lot of bias towards that, even though they're picking up information from Facebook. And that's a whole other social phenomenon. But when you think about it, if you were to use something as simple as like Chat GPT to fact check things, people would probably have a lot more access to readily available information, and have it regurgitated to them in a way that they may understand. Myself included, I can't tell you how many times where I've literally like looked up something and then fact checked it with Chat GPT, and then Chat GPT spits out like a synopsis, and I'm like, I'm still not getting to it. And I will literally have ChatGPT I'll say, okay, please re-explain the synopsis as if I was 5. It will regurgitate it to me. And I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And it gives you articles and it gives you resources. And you can even ask for like non-bias. If you want articles from both sides of the fence, right? Because there's always two sides of the coin. And pulling and making synopsis off of that. So what I'm getting to is that if now that we're in the day and age of AI, which I also feel like we're kind of like on the bubble now, we can use things like that to help make it to where people have a lot more information readily available to them that also they can understand. I'm not saying everybody needs to have something explained to them like they're 5, but what I am saying is that like it can something that can regurgitate and illustrate things from a non-bias and a nonpartisan point of view, and explain it in various different levels. So, and as I said, that's really it for this. So your assignments, do not worry about these dates. It wouldn't this is like a PDF and it wasn't letting me change the size. Just figured I'd just tell you guys. So you're going to have two different things that you're going to do this week. You're going to, one, make a Chirpy Hub account. It's like, if you haven't done it yet, or if you're in 480, like you're talking about, Mark, you've probably already messed with Chirpy Hub. But you just basically need to go make a post in a Chirpy Hub talking about the impacts of social media on elections, which is kind of coincidental given that what is today? It's election time. Election day. Anyways, so make an initial post talking about the impacts of it. There's not like a word limit or anything like that. And then reply to at least two of your classmates. Do all that before the end of the week. Post screenshots, put it into a Word doc or a PDF, and upload that into D12, and you'll be good to go. So create an account and reply to your peoples, and it tells you how to do it here, right? Again, if you've done 480, you're in 480, chances are high that you already messed with Chirpy Hub. So, and then assignment 16, you need to do some social media research. So this is like kind of like an actual paper. Again, no coding this week. Interestingly enough, you need to write a paper that talks about what an echo chamber is, define two examples of echo chambers and how they influence social behavior. Right? I kind of already just had mentioned one. Or well, I hadn't mentioned one, but like talking about politics, right? Where people kind of just like there may or may not be like politicians that treat social media or the press as their own echo chamber, and they regurgitate whatever it is that they want to regurgitate. And that's not just with our country. That's with any country. So provide at least two examples of echo chambers usage to influence social behavior and what specific tactics or just TTPs are employed when using echo chambers. So again, thinking about TTPs, going back to your cyber kill chain, that's what you want to think about. All right. It's just a short paper. It's literally a page or two. It's not anything that you need to do like crazy. Just make sure you have that and make sure you have your sources listed. And that's it. And then next week we'll get picked back up doing some more coding. And yeah, and then also just a word, I did open up the next couple weeks, so you should be able to access the assignments while we're kind of like finishing up and getting into the holiday season, because I want to make sure you guys can work a little bit ahead if you need to, because tis the season. And I want to make sure that if you're like, oh, some folks are going on, you might be going on leave or going somewhere for sorry, my brain is hiccuping. You may be going on leave, or having family come for Thanksgiving, and things like that. Just it's the holidays, and I want to make sure that you can, if you can, work ahead rather than having to worry about assignments due that week. Because as long as you get the work done, that's what I care about. So I've opened up all the assignments for the month of November. The only reason why December is not opened up is just because the final is in that week, and I want to make sure you guys do that in the month of December. So yeah, I'm going to sit here and ramble. We have Greg and Mark in attendance. Do you guys have any questions? If not, you're free to go. All right. All right. All right. All right. Well, I appreciate y'all. If you're watching this, if you're watching this now, it's because you watched the recording. But anyways, for those in class and those watching this now, just have a good week. Enjoy your weekend. If you need me for anything, you know how to get a hold of me. Even though I've been sick, I've still been trying to be responsive as much as I can to email. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Otherwise, happy hacking this week instead of coding, and happy researching, and we will reconvene and see you guys again next Tuesday, same time, same channel. Otherwise, have a great week. I'll see you guys next week. Thanks, everyone.